Graveyard is the most broken card in Clash Royale history. But here's the thing, it's not because it's overpowered. Let me tell you why. Graveyard has destroyed the very soul of competitive play. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how one 5-elixir spell turned the world's most strategic mobile game into a joke. By the end of this video, you'll understand why pro players called Graveyard the death of skill-based competition, and why its impact still haunts the game today. Let me take you back to October 2016. Clash Royale was in its golden age. The game had just launched globally, and it was becoming the chess of mobile gaming. Every interaction was predictable. Every outcome was skill-based. If you placed the same cards in the same spots with the same timing, you'd get the exact same result every single time. This wasn't luck. This was pure strategy. Players spent hundreds of hours mastering pixel-perfect placements. They memorized every interaction, every counter, every possible scenario. The best players weren't just good at the game, they were human calculators who could predict outcomes 3 moves ahead. Tournaments were battles of pure intellect. When someone won, you knew they deserved it. When someone lost, they could analyze exactly what went wrong and improve. The competitive integrity was flawless. Then, October 28th, 2016 happened. Supercell dropped what they called the second legendary spell. They were so proud of this card that they made it a legendary rarity. They saw it as revolutionary, game-changing, special. And they were right, but not in the way they intended. Graveyard introduced something that had never existed in Clash Royale before. RNG, Random Number Generation. For the first time in the game's history, identical inputs could produce completely different outputs. Look at this. Same graveyard placement, same defensive response, same timing. But watch the skeleton spawns. In the first clip, they spawn near the edge. Easy to counter, minimal damage. In the second clip, they spawn right on the tower, devastating damage that's almost impossible to stop. This broke Clash Royale's fundamental promise. Up until this point, the game operated on a simple principle. Better strategy wins. Suddenly, that wasn't true anymore. You could play perfectly and lose because the random number generator didn't favor you. The math was brutal. Graveyard could deal anywhere from 200 to 800 plus damage depending on spawn luck. That's a 400% variance based purely on chance. The community was split from day one. Casual players loved it, finally a card that felt truly magical and unpredictable. But competitive players, they were horrified. For the first time in Clash Royale's history, skill wasn't the only factor determining victory. I found forum posts from top players calling it the beginning of the end and a cancer on competitive integrity. They weren't being dramatic, they were watching their skill-based game transform into something else entirely. At first, pros tried to ignore it. It's just one card, they said. We'll adapt. But Graveyard wasn't just strong, it was everywhere. Within months, it appeared in over 30% of top ladder decks. By February 2018, that number hit 35%. That's not balance. That's domination. But here's what made it truly insidious. Graveyard didn't just create one overpowered deck. It infected every archetype. Beatdown players added it to giant pushes for guaranteed damage. Control players used it for chip damage that couldn't be fully prevented. Even cycle decks started running Graveyard variants because the RNG upside was too good to ignore. The card was so versatile that not running it felt like a disadvantage. You were essentially choosing to give up free damage in exchange for what? Competitive integrity? That's not how winning works. Here's where it gets really twisted. Graveyard actually had a high skill ceiling. The best players could time it perfectly with poison to clear counters. They could predict opponent responses and adjust placement accordingly. They could read the game state and know exactly when to deploy it for maximum impact. Watch this play from a top tournament. Perfect timing, perfect support, perfect read on the opponent's cycle. This is skill at its highest level. But here's the problem. That same player with that same skill level could execute the exact same play and lose because the skeletons spawned in terrible positions. The skill ceiling was high, but it sat on top of a foundation of pure luck. This created a toxic psychological dynamic. Players started second-guessing themselves not because they made bad plays, but because they couldn't control the outcomes. The worst part? Sometimes bad players would beat good players purely through graveyard luck. A mediocre player could throw down a poorly timed graveyard and get godlike spawns that won them the game. Meanwhile, a skilled player's perfectly executed graveyard could whiff completely due to bad RNG. This all came to a head in one of the most controversial moments in Clash Royale esports history, semi-finals of a major tournament, Jigsaw versus Soaking. Jigsaw was losing badly. Soaking just needed one more poison cycle to close out the match. Soaking had the perfect counter ready. His defense was positioned correctly. By all accounts, this graveyard should have been shut down completely. But watch this one skeleton. One skeleton spawned on the far edge, away from the main defense. It walked around, got 3 hits on the tower, and those 3 hits were exactly enough damage to flip the entire match. Jigsaw went on to win the tournament. The community exploded. Was this an incredible comeback or a robbery? Soaking played perfectly but lost to a 1 in 20 RNG outcome. This moment crystallized everything wrong with Graveyard. Skill didn't matter as much as luck. Supercell tried everything to fix this mess. They nerfed the damage. Players complained it was too weak. They reduced the duration. It became inconsistent. They changed the spawn patterns to be less random. It was still random enough to decide games. Look at this usage graph. It's a roller coaster of buffs and nerfs, each one trying to find that impossible sweet spot where RNG feels fair. Spoiler alert, they never found it because you can't make randomness fair in a competitive environment. The developers were stuck in an impossible position. Make Graveyard weak enough that RNG doesn't matter and it becomes unplayable. Make it strong enough to be viable and the RNG complaints come flooding back. There was no middle ground. But Graveyard's acceptance opened the floodgates. If one RNG card was okay, why not more? Goblin Drill with unpredictable spawn locations, various evolution cards with random effects. Each new RNG element could point back to Graveyard as precedent. By 2019, something unprecedented started happening. Pro players began retiring not because they were bad, but because they were tired of losing to luck. These were not scrubs making excuses. These were world-class players who had dedicated their lives to mastering the game. Tournament viewership dropped. Sponsorship deals dried up. The competitive scene that Supercell had spent millions building was crumbling, and Graveyard was a major factor. Today, competitive Clash Royale exists in a weird liminal space. The skill ceiling is higher than ever with frame-perfect interactions, complex strategies, and incredible mechanical execution. But underneath it all, RNG cards like Graveyard still decide matches based on luck rather than skill. Data analysis of recent tournaments shows that roughly 15 to 20% of games involve significant RNG swings that affect the outcome. That might not sound like much, but in a competitive environment, it's massive. Imagine if Graveyard spawned skeletons in a fixed pattern. Same power level, same strategic depth, but completely skill-based. Players could memorize the spawns, plan around them, and outplay opponents through pure knowledge and timing. The technology exists. Other competitive games have solved this problem. You can have unpredictability without randomness through complex interactions, mind games, and strategic depth. Look at games like League of Legends or Counter-Strike. They have unpredictable moments, but they come from player decisions, not random number generators. The excitement comes from outplaying opponents, not from getting lucky. Graveyard's impact goes far beyond just one card. It made no skill plays acceptable in competition. Every random element added since then can trace its DNA back to Graveyard's acceptance. We now have a game where skill is the primary factor, but luck can override skill at crucial moments. That's not necessarily bad for casual play, but it's devastating for competitive integrity. So did Graveyard ruin competitive Clash Royale? The answer is nuanced. It didn't kill the scene entirely. Skilled players still rise to the top, incredible plays still happen, and tournaments still showcase amazing gameplay. But it fundamentally changed what competitive Clash Royale means. We went from a game where skill was everything to a game where skill matters most of the time. And that most of the time qualifier, that's Graveyard's legacy. What do you think? Did Graveyard ruin competitive Clash Royale, or did it add necessary unpredictability to keep the game exciting? Are you Team Skill or Team RNG? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you want to see more deep dives into Clash Royale's most controversial moments, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We're building the ultimate archive of Clash Royale history, and your support makes it possible.